The Dhamma Treasure. 42. The attributes of the three treasures. The Dhamma Treasure is made up of the 9 supermundane phenomena, which are the 4 paths, the 4 fruitions and nibbana, and the doctrine pariyatti of the Buddha, forming the 3 baskets, tipiyaka, or the Buddhist scriptures, together with the practice of the doctrine paipatti, as delineated in the texts. It also implies the attributes of the 3 treasures. This chapter features a discussion of the attributes of the 3 treasures in a treatment that is neither too concise nor too elaborate, but that will cover all salient features. The 9 supreme attributes of the Buddha. The Buddha is endowed with infinite noble qualities. However, for ready remembrance for the devotees among humans, devas and brahmas, only 9 special attributes beginning with worthiness, araha, were specially taught by the Buddha in the various discourses, and the same applies to the teaching about the 6 supreme attributes of the Dhamma and the 9 supreme attributes of the Sangha later. Iti pai sobhagava araha sama sambuddho, vija kara sampano sagato loka vidu, anataro purisa dhamma sarthi, satha deva manusna buddho bhagava. The Buddha who has attained perfect awakening after fulfilling the 10 perfections, parami, in 3 ways, and has destroyed all defilements is endowed with the following attributes. 1. He is worthy araha, being perfectly pure of defilements, so that no trace of them, not even a vague impression, is left to suggest their presence. Being incapable of doing evil even where nobody could know of it. Having broken up the spokes of the wheel of existence. Being worthy of homage by all the 3 worlds of humans, devas and brahmas. 2. He is perfectly self-awakened, samasambuddho, in that he truly comprehends the Dhamma by his intellect and insight and is able to expound it to others. 3. He is endowed with the 3 knowledges, vija kara sampano, knowledge about the past existences of all beings, the divine eye and the extinction of all moral pollutants, which knowledges are expandable into 8 knowledges together with the good conduct definable in 15 ways. 4. The Buddha is well gone, sagato, to nibbana through the 4 paths and fruitions, magga a with makrane, because the Buddha speaks only what is beneficial and true. 5. He knows the conditioned arising of all beings, lokavidu, the basis of their arising in the various planes of existence, and the conditionality of physical and mental phenomena. 6. He is incomparable in taming those who deserve to be tamed, anataro purisa dhamma sarthi. 7. He is the teacher of devas and humans, satha deva manusna, showing them the path leading to nibbana. 8. He is the awakened one Buddha, who knows and teaches the 4 noble truths. 9. He is endowed with the 6 exalted qualities, bhagava supremacy, isariya, knowledge of the 9 supermundane factors, magga phala nibbana, fame and following, yasa, physical perfection, siri, power of accomplishment, kama, and diligence, payata. An explanation of the above attributes. Although the Buddha is endowed with infinite attributes, only the above 9 are declared in his discourses, as the attributes of the Buddha to the various hearers in the deva and human worlds, simply to meet the spiritual or intellectual capacity of the hearer. Each of the 9 attributes should be taken as representative of a category of qualities which may be attributed to the Buddha. How the meaning of the 9 attributes may be properly understood is given below, not too briefly and yet not too comprehensively either. 1. He is worthy araha. Here the attribute in the abstract sense and the possessor of the attribute should be distinguished. The former refers to the natural states that arise in the mental process of the Buddha, while the latter refers to the particular continuum of the 5 aggregates wherein those attributes arise. There are 5 beneficial qualities included in the attribute of being worthy. They are: 1. It means the Buddha, who has destroyed by the supermundane path, lokuttara magga, all the defilements, kilesa, numbering 1,500, without leaving a trace. Defilements may be compared to one's enemies that always work against one's interest and welfare. The defilements were present in the mind-body continuum of the Bodhisattva. They are called enemies, Ari. The Buddha, after meditating on dependent origination called the Great Diamond Insight, Maha Vajira Vipassana, as mentioned earlier on, attained supreme awakening on the undefeated throne. The 4 supermundane paths enabled him to destroy all those defilements group by group. So, the supermundane Dhamma, the 4 noble paths, are the attribute called Araha, whereas the Buddha's mind-body continuum of 5 aggregates is the possessor of that attribute. 2. Then there is the derivation of the word Araha from its root Araha, meaning, the one who has distanced himself from the defilements. As explained above, the Buddha has destroyed all the defilements together with the subtle proclivity to some form of habit without leaving a trace, not even a vague impression to suggest their presence. The defilements and the proclivities have no possibility of ever arising in the Buddha. It is in this sense that the Buddha has distanced himself from the defilements and the proclivities. He has banished them thoroughly. This absolute casting off of all defilements together with proclivities is the attribute of Araha, and the Buddha's mind-body continuum of 5 aggregates is the possessor of that attribute. This attribute is derived from the 4 noble paths. The above attributes explained above are not possessed by other arahats. They are not entitled to be called Araha. The reason is this: all arahats have destroyed all the 1,500 defilements, kilesa, but unlike the Buddha, certain vague impressions or traces of their proclivity to some habits still remain with them. The vague impression is some subtle proclivity remaining in the ordinary arahat's mentality that can involuntarily cause some action to arise in him, as in the case of a worldling. This is because of lingering tendencies for certain actions that had repeatedly occurred in the previous existences of the arahat concerned, in whom they remain as a residual force even after the destruction of all defilements. An example of this phenomenon is found in Venerable Palindavaka, an arahat who lived during the Buddha's times. He had been, for 500 successive existences, a Brahmin of a haughty clan. Members of that clan considered every person outside of their 1107 clan as a scoundrel, and the future Palindavaka used to address all outsiders as scoundrels. This habit became ingrained in him for so long a chain of existences that even after becoming an arahat, Venerable Palindavaka could not help himself while addressing others, though inadvertently, as "you scoundrel." This was not through any defilement of conceit of birth, but was merely a habituated action of the past. 3. Araha can be interpreted as one who has no secret place for doing evil. Negative particle A plus Raha. There are some people who pose themselves as wise men or good men who put on appearances, but who are prone to evil in private. As for the Buddha, since he has destroyed all defilements absolutely, together with any proclivity to habitual actions, there can be no secret place for him to do evil, nor does he do any evil in any secret place. This noble quality of having no secret place for evil is the attribute of Araha, and the Buddha's mind-body continuum of 5 aggregates is the possessor of that attribute. 4. Araha can also mean one who has broken up into pieces the spokes that make up the wheel of existences, era plus hato. Existence in the 3 spheres, which are the sensuous sphere, the form realm and the formless realm, are figuratively called the carriage of the round of existences. The continuous arising of the aggregates, khanda, and the sense spheres, ayatana, and elements, dhatu, is figuratively called the wheel of existences, which is the essential part of the carriage of the round of existences. In that wheel, there are ignorance and craving for existence as its hub, while volitions, pubasakar, that find their expression in meritorious volitions or meritorious actions pertaining to the sensuous sphere and the form realm make up the spokes of the wheel that arise in the sensuous sphere and the form realm. Likewise, demeritorious volitions, a pubasakar, that cause demeritorious actions pertaining to the 4 lower worlds, apaya, make up the spokes of the wheel that arise in the 4 lower worlds. And likewise, meritorious volitions pertaining to the formless realm, anajbasakra, and cause meritorious actions, make up the spokes of the wheel that arise in the formless realm. Of the arising of those 3 types of volitions, ignorance and craving for existence are called the hub, since the hub is where the turning of the wheel originates, forming thereby the cause of the cycle of sasra. Its force is passed on to the rim or tire, figuratively, the result that ends in aging and death by the spokes, the volitions. In this first mode of presentation, the gist about the 12 factors of dependent origination is that ignorance and craving are shown as the hub of the wheel, aging and death are shown as the tire, and the 3 types of volitions are shown as the spokes of the wheel of sasra. The remaining factors of dependent origination are shown as the body of the carriage in the round of existences. It is due to the presence of the pollutants, asava, that ignorance, avijja, arises. Ignorance has its source or cause in the pollutants. As such, the pollutants can be seen as the axle that is fixed to the hub of ignorance and craving for ignorance. Thus, in the wheel of sasra, with the axle of the pollutants fitted to the hub of ignorance and craving for existence, with the spokes of three volitions and the tire of aging and death, which has been turning since the beginningless sasra, that has borne the carriage of existence in the three spheres, the Buddha has, on his attaining perfect awakening, broken into pieces the spokes of the wheel by standing on the 2 feet of mental and physical endeavor, taking a firm stand on morality, sila, and holding, in his hand of conviction, the pickaxe of path knowledge, magga a with mekrane, which is the merit that exhausts productive deeds, kama. Therefore, the breaking up of the spokes of the wheel of sasra by the pickaxe of the 4 paths and fruitions, magga a with mekrane, is the attribute of araha. The mind-body continuum of the 5 aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of this attribute. Another explanation, 1108, the beginningless round of existences is called the cycle of sasra. This cycle, if reviewed in its ultimate sense, is a set of the 12 factors of dependent origination. Ignorance being the source or cause of rebirth is the hub of the wheel. Aging and death being the end of a given existence is the tire of the wheel. The remaining 10 factors, having the hub, ignorance, and the tire, aging and death, as their 2 extremities, are the spokes of the wheel. The Buddha has totally destroyed these spokes of the wheel of sasra. Therefore, the breaking up of the 10 factors of dependent origination by the 4 strokes of the sword of the paths and fruitions, magga a with mekrane, is the attribute of araha in this 4th interpretation. The mind-body continuum of the 5 aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of this attribute. 5. Araha can also be interpreted as he who is worthy of homage by humans, devas, and brahmas. That is because the Buddha is the noblest person, worthy of receiving the special offerings of the 4 monastic requisites by all 3 worlds. That is why when the Buddha arises in the world, powerful devas and humans do not make their offerings and pay homage to any other deity but the Buddha. Let us take some important instances of this fact. Brahma Sahampati made a special offering of a garland of flowers the size of Mount Sinnaru to the Buddha. Other devas and kings, such as Bimbisara, Kosala, etc., made the greatest offerings they could afford to the Buddha. Further, after the passing away of the Buddha, King Asoka spent 960 million to build 84,000 monasteries throughout Jambudvipa in honor of the Buddha. Therefore, the incomparable morality, sila, concentration, samadhi, wisdom, panna, emancipation, vimudi, and knowledge leading to emancipation, vimudi a with mekrane dasana, are the noble qualities that make the Buddha worthy of homage by humans, devas, and brahmas, that is, the attribute of araha. The mind-body continuum of the 5 aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of this attribute. 2. He is perfectly self-awakened, samma sambuddha. This is analyzed like this: samma, truly, correctly; sa, on one's own; buddho, knower of all knowable things. The Buddha discovered the Dhamma by his own intellect and insight, unaided by anyone. Paksika also discover the Dhamma by their own intellect and insight, but they are not able to teach the Dhamma, which they discover, to other persons, so they do not deserve the epithet samma sambuddha. They are only called sambuddha, as in Paksasambutta. Noble disciples, Arya, know the Dhamma only with the assistance of some teachers, and they are able to teach it to others. But, since they do not discover the Dhamma by themselves, they are also not called samma sambuddha. They are only called samma Buddha, rightly awakened. The Buddhas are sambuddha, knowers of the Dhamma and all knowable things through self-awakening. They are also samma Buddha because they can teach the 4 truths to their disciples, each according to their capacity, and in the language they can understand. So, a combination of these 2 qualities makes the Buddha deserving of the title perfectly self-awakened, or samma sambuddha. Therefore, the 4 path knowledges, magga a with mekrane, that enable the Buddha to know, unaided, all knowable things with omniscience at the highest level, is this attribute called samma sambuddha. The mind-body continuum of the 5 aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of this attribute. 3. He is endowed with the three knowledges, Vijja Kara Sampano. The one endowed with the three knowledges or the 8 knowledges and the 15 forms of good conduct. The three knowledges are taught by the Buddha in the discourse about fear and fright, Bhaya Bhairava Sutta, MN 4. The 8 knowledges are taught by the Buddha in the discourse to Ambaha, Ambaha Sutta, DN 3. The 2 ways of teaching knowledge in 3 categories and 8 categories is adopted by the Buddhas through compassionate consideration of the mental framework of 1109, the hearers on each occasion. The 3 knowledges. 1. The knowledge of past existences, Pub Nivesa A with Makrane. By this knowledge, the Buddha can see the past existences of himself and other beings. 2. The knowledge of the divine I, Dibakaku A with Makrane. By this knowledge, the Buddha can see things at faraway places, things concealed, and things too subtle for the ordinary human eyes to see. 3. The knowledge of the extinction of the pollutants, Asavakya A with Makrane. This is knowledge of the Arahat fruition, Arahata Phala A with Makrane, which extinguishes all 4 of the pollutants. The 8 knowledges, 1, 3 as above, and 4. Insight knowledge, Vipassana A with Makrane. This is understanding the impermanence, suffering, and unsubstantiality of all conditioned mental and physical phenomena. 5. Psychic power of the mind, Manomayati A with Makrane. The power to assume various forms through mastery of mind, accomplished by absorption, jhana, practice. 6. Multifarious kinds of psychic power, Idhivita A with Makrane. The power to conjure up great numbers of various forms, human or otherwise. 7. The knowledge of the divine ear, Dibbasoda A with Makrane. The power to hear sounds from faraway places, sounds muffled and sounds too subtle to hear by the ordinary human ear. 8. The knowledge of reading the mind of others, Siddho Pariyaya A with Makrane. The Buddha can know the minds of others in 16 different ways. Of the above 8 knowledges, the 4th knowledge, insight knowledge, is knowledge pertaining to the sensuous sphere. The 3rd knowledge, knowledge of extinction of the pollutants, asava, is supermundane knowledge. The remaining 6 knowledges pertain to the form realm absorption, jhana powers called Rupavakara Kriya Abhina A with Makrane. The 15 forms of perfect practice of morality. 1. Morality of restraint, Sila Savara. The observance of the monastic precepts of restraint under the monastic rule, Padamaka Savara Sila. 2. Control of the faculties, Indriyasugata Dvarata. Keeping watch over the doors of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body and mind with constant mindfulness, so as not to allow any demeritoriousness enter. 3. Knowing the proper extent regarding food, Bhojan Matanuda. He knows the proper extent in receiving alms food and in enjoying it. In receiving alms food, the Buddha considers the degree of devotion of the supporter. If the devotion is strong but the gift is small, the Buddha does not scorn the gift for its smallness but accepts it. On the hand, if the gift is big but the supporter's devotion is weak, the Buddha accepts only a small amount of the gift, considering the weak devotion of the supporter. If the gift is big and the supporter's devotion is strong, the Buddha accepts just an appropriate amount to satisfy his need. This is called knowing the proper extent regarding the acceptance of alms food. In enjoying the food thus collected, the Buddha never eats to the full but stops 4 or 5 morsels short of filling his stomach. More important, he never takes food without cultivating the monastic's contemplation while eating. 4. Wakefulness, Jagrayana Yoga. Wakefulness does not mean just remaining without sleep. The Buddha spends the whole day, during the first watch of the night and the last watch of the night in meditation, while walking or sitting, thus keeping away the hindrances. This purposeful waking is called wakefulness. Out of 24 hours in a day, the Buddha sleeps just 4 hours, i.e., between 10 p.m. and 11:10 a.m., to recuperate his energy. The remaining 20 hours are spent in meditation and monastic practice. The 7 properties of virtuous persons. 5. Confidence in the 3 treasures, Sada. 6. Mindfulness, Sati. 7. Conscience about doing evil, hiri. 8. Concern about doing evil, otapa. 9. Wide learning of the doctrine, bahusaka. 10. Diligence, viriya. 11. Wisdom, panna. 12-15. The four-form realm absorptions, jhana. These refer to the four absorptions, jhana, of the form realm under the fourfold reckoning of absorptions, jhana. The above 15 forms of good conduct lead straight to nibbana, the deathless element, which as worldlings, the disciples never have realized before. Hence they are called good conduct, kara. Knowledge, vijja, and good conduct, kara, are complementary to each other. The former is like the eyes, whereas the latter is like the legs. To get to a desired place, the eyes without the legs cannot accomplish it any more than the legs without the eyes. Therefore, knowledge and good conduct should be cultivated together. It might be asked, are not knowledge and good conduct attainable by the noble disciples? The answer is yes and no. The noble ones, Arya, can attain them, but they cannot be said to have the attribute of knowledge and good conduct, vijja karasampanna, which belongs to the Buddha alone for the reasons given below. There are two factors in this attribute. They are being accomplished in knowledge and being accomplished in good conduct. The Buddha's accomplishment of knowledge is the source of omniscience. His accomplishment of good conduct is the source of his being a compassionate one. Being thus accomplished in two ways, the Buddha, by his knowledge, knows what is beneficial to each individual being and what is not. Further, the Buddha, by his good conduct, extends his compassion on all beings to cause them to abstain from what is not beneficial to them and to adopt what is beneficial to them. His accomplishment of knowledge and accomplishment of good conduct, therefore, together make his teaching the doctrine of liberation. It also ensures that his disciples that their practice is the righteous, correct practice. Therefore, the accomplishment of knowledge and the accomplishment of good conduct combined together are called the attribute of vijja karasampanno. The mind-body continuum of the five aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of this attribute. 4. Being well gone, sagato. The commentary explains this attribute in four ways. 1. Su well gata gone. Thus the going to, the attaining of, the noble path, hence the one who has attained the noble paths is the first meaning. The noble path is faultless or flawless and therefore is magnificent. Therefore, the Buddha is called well gone, sagato, because he proceeds to the haven from all dangers, by the magnificent path, in an unattached attitude. Under this interpretation, the noble path is the attribute and the mind-body continuum of the five aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of that attribute. 2. Su equals nibbana, the excellent goal. Gata means he proceeds there by means of knowledge. Nibbana is the excellent goal because it is the end of all strife and is the ultimate 11-11 peace. Attaining that excellent goal with path knowledge, magga a with mekrane, at one sitting is the Buddha's attribute. Here the noble path is the attribute and the mind-body continuum of the five aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of that attribute. In both of these interpretations, proceeding to nibbana means having nibbana as an object of thought. The going or proceeding here is by means of knowledge only and does not, indeed cannot, connote the physical act of going which only applies where a certain geographical place is the destination. 3. Su equals sama, well, gata, means gone to nibbana by means of path knowledge, magga a with mekrane. Here the adverb well denotes freedom from the defilements. The going is well since the defilements destroyed by the four path knowledges do not arise in the Buddha anymore. In all the above three interpretations the ultimate sense is the same, having nibbana as object of thought through the four paths. This is the first explanation of well gone, sagato, in the brief meaning given earlier on. 4. Su equals sama, well, gata, speaks appropriately on all occasions. Here the root gata is changed into gata. The appropriate speech or speaking well is further explained thus. There are 6 kinds of speech among people. Of these 6, 4 should be rejected, i.e. not resorted to, and only 2 should be adopted. 1. There is the kind of speech which is not true, which is not beneficial, and not liked by the other party. For instance, saying that a virtuous person is wicked. The Buddha avoids this kind of speech. 2. There is the kind of speech which is true but which is of no benefit to, and not acceptable to the other party. For instance, calling a bad man, not intending to correct him but merely out of malice. The Buddha avoids this kind of speech also. 3. There is the kind of speech which is true, which is beneficial but is not liked by the other party hearing it. For instance, referring to Devdatta as the one heading for Niraya, which was spoken by the Buddha out of compassion for him. The Buddha speaks this kind of speech when occasion demands it. 4. There is the kind of speech which is not true, which is not beneficial to the other party, but is liked by him. For instance, quoting the Vedas and claiming that an evil deed such as killing will lead to the good destinations. The Buddha avoids this kind of speech also. 5. There is the kind of speech which is true but is not beneficial to the other party, and he likes to hear it. For instance, a true statement which is going to drive a wedge between the other parties. The Buddha avoids this kind of speech also. 6. There is the kind of speech which is true, which is beneficial to the other party, and he likes to hear it. For instance, discourse on generosity, morality, etc. given on appropriate occasions. The Buddha speaks this kind of speech when the occasion is appropriate. Out of the above 6 kinds of speech, the Buddha speaks only the 3rd and the 6th kinds. Regarding the 3rd kind above, if a statement is true and is beneficial to the other party, although he does not like to hear it, the Buddha would say it because it would benefit other people who might hear it, and it will therefore be for the good of the world at large. Thus, if a statement is true and is beneficial to the hearer, the Buddha says it whether the hearer likes it or not. Therefore the Buddha is called well gone, Sagato, the one who speaks what is beneficial and true. The speaking of what is beneficial and true is the attribute, and the mind-body continuum of the 5 aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of this attribute. The discourse about Prince Abhya. The following is based on the discourse to Prince Abhya, Abhya Raja Kumara Sutta, MN 58, and its commentary. These 6 kinds of speech are featured in the discourse to Prince Abhya. A brief account follows. At one time, the Buddha was staying in Vivana Monastery at Rajagaha. During that time, Prince Abhya, son of King Bimbisara, approached his teacher, Nigahanapada, and, after paying respects to him, sat in a suitable place. Then Nigahanapada said to Prince Abhya, "Go to the ascetic Gautama, Prince, and accuse him with falsity in doctrine. If you can accuse him, you will gain wide fame as one who can accuse even the ascetic Gautama with falsity in doctrine." "But, venerable sir," said Prince Abhya, "how am I to accuse ascetic Gautama, who is so powerful of falsity in doctrine?" 1. Prince, go to ascetic Gautama and say this: "Venerable sir, would you say something that is unacceptable or unwelcome to someone?" And if ascetic Gautama were to reply, "Prince, the realized one would say something that is unacceptable or unwelcome to someone. In that case, you should say to ascetic Gautama, 'Venerable sir, if that is so, what is the difference between the Venerable One and any other worldling?' For any worldling would say something unacceptable or unwelcome to someone. 2. If, on the other hand, ascetic Gautama replies, 'Prince, the realized one would not say something that is unacceptable or unwelcome to someone. In that case, you should say to ascetic Gautama, 'Venerable sir, if that is so, why did the Venerable One say to Devdatta, "You, Devdatta, are heading to the lower realms of Niraya. You are going to suffer in the Niraya realms throughout an aeon. You are irredeemable"? If I may add, Venerable Devdatta is very angry and miserable at those remarks. Prince, if you only confront ascetic Gautama with the above questions, which allows no escape for him, that ascetic Gautama will be just helpless, like a man who has swallowed a fish hook." It took Nigahanapada 4 months to think out the above questions with which to harass the Buddha. Then he taught it to his disciple, Prince Abhya. Before the advent of the Buddha, there were 6 religious teachers who led their own sects, claiming themselves as Buddhas. People could not discriminate truth from untruth and went, each after his or her liking, to these teachers. Only when the Buddha appeared in the world, did these adherents, who possessed previous merit, leave them in large numbers and become disciples of the Buddha. Nigahanapada was sore with the thought that ascetic Gautama had won over his followers. He thought hard how to discredit the Buddha. "I must find a question to confront ascetic Gautama, a question so neat that ascetic Gautama would be caught helplessly." He fed himself well on the offerings of daily food sent to him from his royal disciple, Prince Abhya, and spent days thinking of a problem that would confound ascetic Gautama. When a question came to his thought, he turned it over in his mind and found a flaw which the Buddha would easily point out. And, when he thought of another question, he would later detect a flaw there and had to drop it. And thus he spent 4 hard months in thinking out really hard questions. At last, he got the question: would the Buddha speak something that would be unacceptable or unwelcome to someone? Nigahanapada was sure that he had found a question which ascetic Gautama would be quite at a loss to find fault in, either in its presentation or in its answer. He then thought about some suitable agent who would confront the Buddha. He remembered Prince Abhya, whom he believed was wise. So, he taught the question to the prince and persuaded him to go and present it to the Buddha. Prince Abhya was a censorious person, and so gladly undertook to do what his master asked. "Very well, master," he said, and after paying respects to Nigahanapada, he left him. He went to the Vivana monastery where the Buddha was staying, and after paying respects to the Buddha, he sat in a suitable place. Then he looked at the sun which was about to set. He thought, "It took 4 months for my teacher to formulate this question. If such a profound question were to be taken up point by point, there would not be sufficient time today. I will confront the Buddha tomorrow at my palace," he thought to himself. So he said to the Buddha, "Venerable Sir, may the Venerable One, for the sake of my merit, kindly accept an offering of food to the Venerable One and 3 other monastics at my palace tomorrow." The number of 3 monastics only being invited by Prince Abhya is based on 2 considerations. 1. If a big company of monastics were present on the occasion of his putting the question, even though the question itself is in a few words only, there might be wide discussions by the company and other matters and other discourses might arise, in which case controversy and heated debates might occur. 2. If no monastics were invited to accompany the Buddha, people might think, "This Prince Abhya is a stingy man. He knows the fortunate one goes on the daily alms round accompanied by hundreds of monastics, and yet he invites only the fortunate one." The Buddha accepted the invitation of Prince Abhya by remaining silent. Prince Abhya, having noted that his invitation was accepted, rose from his seat and, paying respects to the Buddha, returned to his palace. The next morning the Buddha went to the palace of Prince Abhya and took his meal there. After the meal was finished, Prince Abhya took his seat at a lower place and addressed the Buddha as taught by Nigahanapada thus: "Venerable Sir, would the Venerable One say something that is unacceptable or unwelcome to someone?" The Buddha said to Prince Abhya, "Prince Abhya, regarding your question, no single answer can be given in a straight yes or no." The Buddha, in effect, said, "A speech of this nature as described by you may or may not be spoken by the realized one. If by saying it there is benefit to the other party, the realized one would say it. If there is no benefit, the realized one would not say it." By this single statement, the Buddha crushed the question like a mountain shattered by a thunderbolt, thus disposing of the weighty question which took 4 months for Nigahanapada to formulate. Thereupon Prince Abhya could no longer challenge the Buddha and said to him, "Venerable Sir, by this question all the Nigahas have gone to wreck and ruin. Prince, why do you say?" "Venerable Sir, by this question all the Nigahas have gone to wreck and ruin?" Prince Abhya then recounted the whole episode about his visit to Nigahanapada and the mission he was assigned by his master. At that time, Prince Abhya had on his lap his infant child who could only lie flat on its back. The prince placed the baby there on purpose. Wherever dogmatic persons enter into a debate on a matter of doctrine, they used to keep something handy with them, such as a fruit or a flower or a book. As the debate proceeds, and if one of the disputants is gaining his points, he would trounce the opponent relentlessly. But if the going is tougher than is expected and defeat is likely, he would pretend to be smelling the flower or tasting the fruit or reading the book that is in his hand, as if he was not following the trend of the arguments. Here, Prince Abhya placed the infant on his lap for the same purpose. He thought to himself, "Ascetic Gautama is a great man who has won many a debate on doctrine. He is the one who quashes others' doctrines. If I were to win, it is well and good. But if I should be cornered, I would pinch the baby and announce, 'Oh friends, how the baby cries! Let us break the debate now and continue later.'" The Buddha, being infinitely wiser than Prince Abya, chose to make the infant itself trounce the prince. And even before Prince Abya could find time to pinch the baby, the Buddha asked Prince Abya thus, "Prince Abya, what do you think of this?" "You may answer whatever you think fit. Suppose this infant on your lap, either due to your negligence or to the negligence of its nurse, were to put a piece of wood or a potsherd or a broken piece of a glass bottle in its mouth. What would you do to the infant?" And Prince Abya answered, "Venerable sir, I would take out the piece of wood or potsherd or broken glass from the baby quickly. If there should be difficulty in taking it out at the first attempt, then I would hold the baby's head fast with my left hand, and, with the bent forefinger of my right hand, I would dislodge the piece of wood or potsherd or broken glass from its mouth, even if that operation might draw blood. I would do it because I have great love and compassion for my baby." Prince Abya, on the same analogy, there are these 6 kinds of speech. 1. The realized one does not speak that kind of speech which is not true, which is not beneficial, and which is unacceptable to the other party. 2. The realized one does not speak that kind of speech which is true but is not beneficial and which is unacceptable to the other party. 3. The realized one would, if occasion demands, speak that kind of speech which is true, which is beneficial but which is unwelcome by the other party. 4. The realized one does not speak that kind of speech which is not true, which is not beneficial, but which is welcome by the other party. 5. The realized one does not speak that kind of speech which is true, which is not beneficial but which is welcome by the other party. 6. The realized one would, if he sees benefit to the hearers, speak that kind of speech which is true, which is beneficial, and which is welcome by the other party. Prince Abya, out of these 6 kinds of speech, the realized one avoids 4 of them and speaks 2 of them. This is because I have great goodwill and compassion on all beings. The gist is that the Buddha speaks what is beneficial and true regardless of the person. The commentary terms the 4th kind of speech above as Anya Katha, an absurdity, i.e., a speech that neither party likes, nor is it true, and it is not beneficial but it is liked by the other party, and illustrates it with the story of a rustic old man. The story is related below for general knowledge. The story of a rustic old man. A rustic old man was drinking in a liquor shop in town. A group of swindlers joined him and conspired between themselves to divest the old man of his possessions by trickery. They agreed among themselves, "We shall relate our experiences each in turn. Anyone who says he does not believe it will lose all his possessions to the storyteller and also become his slave." And they said to the old man, "Grand uncle, do you agree to this proposition?" The old man replied, "So be it, boys, so be it." Then the first town dweller at the drinking party related his story thus. "Friends, when my mother conceived me, she had a particular longing to eat wood apple. And as she had no one to pick the fruit for her, she sent me to pick a wood apple. Then I, who was in my mother's womb, went to a wood apple tree. As I could not climb up the tree, I took hold of my 2 legs and threw them upwards into the tree as I would a wooden club. Then I went from one bough to the other and picked the wood apples. After that I found myself unable to climb down the tree, and so I went back home, took a ladder and used it to get down. I gave the fruit to my mother. They were of a size as big as a water pot. All the wood apples were carried down the tree in my pouch fashioned from the loincloth I was wearing. Out of my gathering of wood apples my mother ate 60 of them at one sitting till she satisfied herself with the special longing during conception. The remainder of the fruit, after my mother had eaten, were for distribution to all the villagers, both young and old. The front room of our house is 16 cubits wide. We stored the wood apples in it after removing all furniture from there. The fruit filled the room to the roof. The surplus fruit had to be piled up outside the house, and it was as high as a hillock of 80 cubits high. Now, friends, what do you say? Do you believe the story or not?" The rustic old man remained silent. The town folks at the drinking party answered in the positive. Then they asked the old man, "Do you believe the story?" The old man replied, "Well, this is a vast country. It is believable in this vast country." The remaining men at the drinking party told their tall stories in turn. And then it was the old man's turn. "Now listen to my story," he said. "Not only are the houses in your town big and grand, houses in our village are also big and grand. I want you to note that our family specializes in cotton planting. We have hundreds of acres under cotton cultivation. Amidst the vast cotton plantation, we had a particularly big cotton plant that grew to a height of 80 cubits. There were 5 branches in it. Of those 5, 4 were fruitless, but the 5th one, turning to the east, bore a huge cotton pod as big as a water jar. From that pod with 6 compartments there bloomed forth 6 blossoms of cotton flower. I shaved myself, bathed, and after applying unguent to my body, I went to the cotton field, and when I saw the 6 big cotton blossoms from the same pod I was very pleased. I reached out to them and plucked them. Then lo and behold! In place of these 6 cotton blossoms there were in my hands 6 strong slave men. These 6 slave men of mine left me and ran away to other places. I have not seen them for a long time. Now only I have found them. They are none other than the 6 of you. You, my boy, are Nanda, my slave, and you are Poa, my slave, and you are Vahamna, my slave, and you are Siddha, my slave, and you are Magala, my slave, and you are Pohia, my slave. Then the old man rose up suddenly and stood holding the 6 knots of the 6 men firmly in his hand. The 6 town dwellers who were at the drinking party could not deny that the story was not true, for if they did, they would, under the terms of agreement, become slaves to the old man all the same. The old man then took the 6 men to the court where they were officially branded as slaves, and they remained so for as long as the old man lived. This sort of nonsensical speech may be amusing, but it is not true and is not beneficial. This kind of speech is never spoken by the Buddha. Then Prince Abhya said to the Buddha, "Venerable Sir, when wise princes, wise Brahmins, wise householders, and wise monastics come to you with their various questions, do you have answers thought out beforehand to fit their possible questions? Or do the answers come to mind instantly?" The Buddha said to the prince, "Prince Abhya, in that case, I will put a question to you. You may answer it in any way you like. Now, what do you think of this? You are an expert in chariots, are you not?" "That is true, Venerable Sir. I am an expert about the chariot and its various components." "Prince, what do you think of this? If anybody should ask you, 'What is this part of the chariot called?' would you have the answer thought out beforehand? Or would you answer it straight away instantly?" "Venerable Sir, I am reputed as an expert about chariots. I am skillful about all the components of a chariot. All the components of the chariot are clear in my mind. Therefore, any question concerning a chariot is at my fingertips." "Prince, in much the same way, when wise princes, wise Brahmins, wise householders, and wise monastics come to me with their various questions, the answer comes to my mind instantly. This is because the realized one is possessed of the Dhamma element, Dhamma Dhatu, which is omniscience, the penetrating knowledge about all things knowable." When this was said in a wonderfully amiable manner, Prince Abhya was deeply impressed. He begged of the Buddha to be his refuge, the Dhamma to be his refuge, the Sangha to be his refuge, and became a disciple of the Buddha. Later Prince Abhya became a monastic, and taking up monastic practice ardently, he became an arahat with the 4 discriminations, Paisambit, the 6 special apperceptions, Cha-abhina, and the knowledge of 5 outstanding features: penetration, facility, quickness, breadth, and brilliance. 5. He knows the conditioned arising of all beings, loka vidu. Loka means the 5 aggregates that are clung to upadanakanda. In another sense, the world of sentient beings, sataloka, the world of conditioned phenomena, sakraloka, the world as the basis of various planes of existence, okasaloka. Vidu means the one who has analytical knowledge and complete comprehension. The path of purification, Visuddhimagga, explains loka vidu in 2 ways. 1. Under the first method, loka is interpreted as the 5 aggregates that are clung to. These 5 are understood. 1. As suffering, dukkha. 2. As originating in craving, ta. 3. As ceasing when nibbana is realized. 4. As the noble path that is the true path leading to nibbana, the cessation of the aggregates. Thus loka vidu means the Buddha has complete knowledge about the 5 aggregates that are clung to. In knowing about the world of the 5 aggregates that are clung to, the Buddha knows not only the 5 aggregates but knows them in their 4 aspects that make his knowledge complete and perfect. The four aspects are 1. He understands that the five aggregates that are clung to are suffering indeed, dukkha. 2. He understands the originating aspect of these five aggregates, that craving is the origin of the five aggregates. 3. He understands nibbana, the cessation aspect of the five aggregates. 4. He understands the way leading to cessation, the noble path. Thus the Buddha has a complete understanding of the five aggregates that are clung to. That is why the Buddha is called Lokavidu. Under the first method, the complete all-round knowledge from the four aspects of the five aggregates of clinging is the attribute of Lokavidu. The five aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of that attribute. 2. Although the first method of interpretation is complete about the world of the five aggregates, the method does not describe Loka fully yet. Therefore, the commentary gives a second interpretation. Under the second method, Loka is taken to mean the world of sentient beings, Sattaloka, the world of conditioned phenomena, Sakraloka, and the world constituting the basis for the various planes of existence, Okasaloka. Loka means that which rises and falls, that undergoes rise and fall. In the Abhidhamma point of view, the aggregates of living things are called the aggregates connected with the faculties, Indriya Bada Khanda. The aggregates of non-living things are called the aggregates divested of the faculties, Anindriya Bada Khanda. 1. The aggregates of living things are liable to attachment to visible objects, and so on, and hence are called satta, attached. Since these aggregates form the bases of merit or demerit that rise and fall, they are also called loka. Thus, we have the term satta loka, the world of attached beings. 2. The aggregates of non-living things, such as the infinite world elements, kakava, the bases of sentient existence, bhumi, and mansions, etc. are the bases where sentient beings exist, whether they are liable to get frightened as in the case of worldlings, stream enters and once returners, or are free from fear as in the case of non-returners and arahats, and are called okasa. And since these bases are the places where sentient beings rise and fall, they are called loka. Thus we have the term okasa loka, the world of what is possible. 3. Both the living things and non-living things are conditioned by causes and are called conditioned sakra. The world is subject to rising and falling, and hence called loka. Thus we have the term sakra loka, the conditioned world. This conditioned world is fully understood by the Buddha. We shall expand on this as explained in the Path of Purification. Visuddhi Magga Eko Loko Sab Satta Hrahitik. All beings have each its own conditioning factors. This is a world in itself. Therefore, loka here means the conditioned world, sakra loka. This is because although reference is made to all beings, the crucial point here is the conditioned nature which is causing the rise and fall of all beings. 1. The Buddha has full knowledge about the conditioned world in that he knows it, 1. As a single factor that causes all conditioned things. 2. As two conditioned things, mind and matter. 3. As three conditioned things in the three kinds of sensation. 4. As four conditioned things in the four conditional factors. 5. As five conditioned things in the five aggregates that are clung to. 6. As six conditioned things in the internal sense spheres. 7. As seven conditioned things in the seven stations of consciousness. 8. As 8 conditioned things in the 8 worldly conditions. 9. As 9 conditioned things in the 9 bases of existence for beings. 10. As 10 conditioned things in the 10 corporeal sense spheres. 11. As 12 conditioned things in the 12 sense bases. 12. As 18 conditioned things in the 18 elements. 2. Just as the Buddha has full knowledge of the conditioned world, so also he knows fully about the world of living beings in that 1. He knows the proclivities of individuals, asaya. 2. He knows the latent tendencies in individuals, anusuya. 3. He knows the habitual conduct of individuals, carita. 4. He knows the leanings or dispositions of individuals, adhimudi. He knows individuals who have little dust of defilements in their eye of wisdom, and he knows individuals who have a thick layer of dust of defilements in their eye of wisdom. He knows individuals who have sharp faculties such as conviction, and he knows individuals who have dull faculties. He knows individuals who have a natural desire for liberation and individuals who have little desire for liberation. He knows individuals who are endowed with righteousness such as conviction and wisdom that facilitate them to win path knowledge, and individuals not so endowed. He knows individuals who are free from drawbacks in their previous deeds, defilements and resultants that mar the attainment of path knowledge and individuals not so free. 1. Proclivities, asaya. Proclivities means the mental bent or disposition of individuals. For example, a forest deer is naturally disposed to live in the forest. He may go out to the fields to graze, but his home is the forest. Similarly, individuals attend their mind to various sense objects, but, after wandering about from object to object, the mind of those who are bent on faring in the round of existences remain in wrong views, whereas the mind of those who are bent on liberation from the round of existences are pure and remain in knowledge. So wrong views and knowledge are called proclivities, asaya. The proclivity of wrong views, daihi asaya, is again of two kinds. The proclivity towards the wrong view of annihilation, akita daihi, and the proclivity towards the wrong view of eternalism, sasata daihi. The proclivity towards wisdom, panna asaya, also is of two kinds. Insight knowledge tending to path knowledge, vipassana panna asaya, and path knowledge itself, which is the knowledge and seeing things as they really are, yatha Buddha a with mekrane asaya. In knowing the proclivities of individuals, the Buddha knows 1. That this individual is bent on faring in the round of existences and has a proclivity towards the wrong view of annihilation. 2. That this individual is bent on faring in the round of existences and has a proclivity towards the wrong view of eternalism. 3. That this individual is bent on liberation from the round of existences, a pure being, and has insight knowledge. 4. That this individual is bent on liberation from the round of existences and has path knowledge. 2. Latent tendencies, anusuya. These are defilements that have not been eradicated by path knowledge, magga a with mekrane, and are liable to arise perceptibly whenever circumstances prevail. These latent tendencies are of 7 kinds. They are called the elements of latent tendencies. They are 1. The latent tendency of passion, kamarganusia. 2. The latent tendency of attachment to existence, bavarganusia. 3. The latent tendency of hatred, panacea. 4. The latent tendency of conceit, mananusia. 5. The latent tendency of wrong view, dinusia. 6. The latent tendency of uncertainty, visakikanusia. 7. The latent tendency 11-18 of ignorance, avijjanasaya. In knowing the latent tendencies of individuals, the Buddha knows that this individual is full of the latent tendency to passion, that this individual is full of the latent tendency of attachment to existence, that this individual is full of the latent tendency of hatred, the latent tendency of conceit, the latent tendency of wrong views, the latent tendency of uncertainty, the latent tendency of ignorance. Anusuya kilesa, it should be noted, is of 3 degrees according to its tendency to occur, namely, 1. The latent tendency to defilements. 2. The defilements that have actually arisen with their 3 phases of arising, upada, developing or momentary presence, tai, and dissolution, bhaga. 3. The defilements that have erupted into physical or verbal misconduct. Let us illustrate this. Supposing some worldling in whom defilements have not yet been eradicated by path knowledge, magga a with mekrane, was making an offering. Even during the meritorious act, while great wholesome thoughts, mahakasalasita, are arising in his mind, if he were to meet with some pleasant sense object, this circumstance tends to bring alive sensuous thoughts. It is the latent tendency of passion in the supporter because being a worldling, he has not eradicated passion. When further contact occurs with the sense object that is agreeable to him, that latent tendency of passion grows into decidedly defiled thoughts, parayuna kilesa. Then, if he checks himself with right attention, the thoughts defiled by passion may subside. If, however, instead of right attention, he is driven by wrong attention, the defiled thoughts become translated into wicked acts, either bodily or verbally. This is the eruptive stage of the defilement of passion, vidikama kilesa. This is an example of the way the defilement of passion grows from its latent tendency or seed element to overt acts in 3 progressive stages. The same principle also applies to the other defilements such as hatred, conceit, etc. 3. Habitual conduct, karita. Habitual conduct means meritorious actions or demeritorious actions. In another sense, it refers to the 6 kinds of habituated action or habitual conduct that occurs frequently in the present life: greed, raga; hatred, dosa; delusion, moha; faith, sada; intelligence, buddhi; and cogitation, vitakka. The 2 pi terms karita and vasana should be distinguished. The vague impression of habituated acts, whether good or bad, in previous existences that persist till the present existence, is called vasana. Out of the 6 kinds of conduct described above, the one which is apt to occur for most of the time in the present existence is called karita. The Buddha knows the habitual conduct, karita, of every individual, such as this individual is predominantly of good conduct, sukharita. This individual is predominantly of bad conduct, dukkharita. This individual is predominantly of greedy conduct, ragakarita. This individual is predominantly of hateful conduct, dosakarita. This individual is predominantly of deluded conduct, mohakarita. This individual is predominantly of faithful conduct, sadakarita. This individual is predominantly of intelligent conduct, buddhikarita. This individual is predominantly of a cogitative conduct, vitakka. Further, the Buddha also knows the nature of these 6 types of conduct: the defiling conditions, the purifying conditions, the essential conditions, the results, and the consequences of these 6 types of conduct. 4. Leaning or disposition, adhimuti. Disposition means the natural leaning of individuals. There are 2 kinds of disposition: the natural preference for or leaning towards ignoble things, hinadamuti, and the natural preference for or leaning towards noble things, pattamuti. People generally associate with persons of like nature. Those of ignoble disposition associate with persons of ignoble disposition. Those of noble disposition associate with persons of noble disposition. The Buddha knows the type of disposition in every individual, such as whether a certain person is of ignoble disposition or of noble disposition. Further, the Buddha knows the degree of disposition in each individual, such as whether it is high or lower or lowest. Disposition depends on the degree of faith, endeavor, mindfulness, concentration, and knowledge, which are the 5 faculties. Thus, the Buddha knows fully about living beings in respect of the 4 proclivities, asaya; the 7 latent tendencies, anusuya; the 3 volitions, abhisakra, or the 6 types of habitual conduct, karita; and the types and degrees of disposition, adhimuti. 3. Just as the Buddha has complete knowledge of the world of living beings, he also has complete knowledge of the world of non-living things, the places where living beings have their abodes, such as the world elements, kakava, mansions, forests and mountains, etc. A long section included here on the cosmos has been moved to the further explanations. In this way, the Buddha has a complete knowledge of the infinite world elements as basis for sentient existence. This complete and clear knowledge of the world of living beings, the world of conditioned phenomena, and the world of non-living things is the attribute of lokavidu. The 5 aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of that attribute. 6. He is incomparable in taming those who deserve to be tamed, Anattaro Purisa Dhamma Sarthi. The path of purification, Visuddhimagga, gives the explanation of Anattaro Purisa Dhamma Sarthi in 2 separate ways. Anattaro explained as one attribute and Dhammasarthi as another, and it also gives a combined meaning as one attribute. We shall describe both the interpretations here. Anattaro. The Buddha is incomparable in morality and so on, in the whole world, so that he reigns supreme in this attribute among the world of living beings. To explain this further, the Buddha reigns supreme in morality, in concentration, in wisdom, in emancipation, and in knowledge leading to emancipation. This supremacy is the attribute of Anattaro. The 5 aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of that attribute. Purisa Dhamma Sarthi. He who tames those who deserve to be tamed, Purisa Dhamma. Those beings deserving to be tamed, Sarthi, the tamer, i.e., a skillful teacher or instructor. Those deserving to be tamed include humans, devas, and brahmas. For example, the Buddha tamed Naga kings, Apalala, Kodara, Mahadara, Agasika, Dumasika, and Arava, Dhanapala the elephant king, etc., and made them abandon their savagery and established them in the three refuges. Then the Buddha tamed Sakaka, the wandering ascetic, Nigahaputta, Ambaha, the young man, Brahmins Pakrasati, Soadanta and Kadanta, etc. He also tamed powerful devas, such as Avaka, Susaloma, Karaloma, and even Saka, the lord of the devas. The Buddha not only tamed individuals from their savage stage into being disciples, but also uplifted those virtuous persons who had had purity of morality to attain the first absorption, jhana, or the noble ones, arya, who were stream enterers, to attain the three higher paths by showing the method of training. So his taming also includes leading already half-tamed persons to the arahat fruition, arahata phala. Therefore, Purisa Dhammasarthi means establishing savage beings in the lower morality, and guiding those possessed of lower morality, i.e. those half-tamed, to attain the higher benefits leading to the arahat fruition, arahata phala. This knowledge of instructing others is the attribute of Dhammasarthi. The five aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of this attribute. In the combined interpretation of Anataro and Purisa Dhammasarthi, only a single attribute is counted, to mean the Buddha, who is unrivaled in taming those who are untamed. To explain this, when a horse tamer trains a horse, he does not and cannot train it into the desired state in a day. He has to train it over many days repeatedly. The same holds true with other animals, such as elephants, bullocks, etc. Even when a horse is supposed to be tame, it is not free from pranks. The same holds true with other animals. But the Buddha can tame a person at once in the course of one dialogue to attain the 8 absorptions, jhana, or attain the arahat fruition. When the disciple has become an arahat, he becomes completely tamed, never showing any more mad frolics. Therefore the Buddha is unrivaled in taming the untamed. The knowledge of tutoring the untutored, ignorant, persons is the attribute of Anataro Purisa Dhammasarthi. The 5 aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of this attribute. 7. He is the teacher of devas and humans, Sathadeva Manusna. This means the Buddha guides devas and humans to gain for themselves the benefits at present, the benefits in the future, and the ultimate benefit of nibbana. The Buddha teaches, exhorts, and instructs all beings to gain present benefits for some, to gain benefit in future existences for others, and to attain the ultimate benefit of nibbana for others, each according to his or her sufficiency of past merit. Therefore the knowledge in helping devas and humans to gain present benefits, benefits in the future, and the benefit of nibbana is the attribute of Sathadeva Manusna. The 5 aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of this attribute. Another explanation: the Buddha is like the master of a caravan, hence he is called Sathadeva Manusna. To explain it further, a wise leader of a caravan, Satha, conducts the caravan safely over a difficult and dangerous journey. There are 5 kinds of difficult and dangerous journeys. 1. A journey notorious for highway robbers. 2. A journey through wild country where ferocious beasts, such as lions or tigers, roam. 3. A barren stretch of land where food resources are not available. 4. A journey over parched country with no water resources. 5. A journey passing through a country infested with yakas. Just as a good leader of a caravan safely conducts the caravan through the above 5 kinds of hazardous journey, so also the Buddha gives protection to the wayfarers of the journey of life against the hazards of the journey marked by rebirth, aging, disease and death, grief, lamentation, pain, sorrow and anguish, lust, hatred, delusion, conceit, wrong view and demeritorious deeds, and conducts them to the safety of nibbana. Therefore, the doctrine of the Buddha which leads beings to nibbana is the attribute of Sathadeva Manusna. The 5 aggregates of the Buddha is the possessor of this attribute. The attribute Sathadeva Manusna should not be taken to mean to cover devas and humans only. The term Deva Manusna is used to give prominence to beings of the fortunate existences and who are fit to become liberated. However, the Buddha also gives appropriate guidance and counsel to animals so that they also benefit from it and are thereby equipped with sufficing conditions to attain the paths and fruitions in their next existence or in their third existence. The commentary gives the example of Makadevaputta which is related below. Makadevaputta. At one time, the Buddha was staying at a monastery close to Gagara Lake, near the city of Kampa. which served as his place for collecting daily alms food. One morning, on his usual Buddha routine of entering the absorption of compassion, he saw that, if he held a discourse in the evening, a frog would come, and being absorbed in the sound of the Dhamma speech, it would be killed accidentally and be reborn in the Deva realm. And that Deva would come to him, accompanied by his big retinue, which would be seen by the large audience, who would gain knowledge of the four truths and so make an end of suffering. After having this foreknowledge through his absorption of compassion, the Buddha went into the city of Kampa for alms round in the morning. When the morning meal was finished, he went to the monastery, received the homage paid by the monastics, and went into seclusion in his scented chamber, spending the day in the bliss of the absorption of the Arahat fruition. In the evening, when the four kinds of assembly were gathered at the lecture hall near Gagara Lake, the Buddha came out of his scented chamber, took his seat in the lecture hall, and delivered a discourse. At that time, a frog came out from the lake, listened to the voice of the Buddha, and knowing that this is the voice of the Dhamma, was absorbed in it. Although animals do not have the capacity to understand the meaning of the discourse, at least they can know the voice as one of Dhamma or righteousness or as one of wrongness, as the case may be. Then a cowherd came upon the scene, and being deeply impressed by the Buddha's splendor in delivering the discourse and the deep silence in which the audience were listening to the discourse, he stood there leaning on his staff in hand. He did not notice that there was a frog on whose head his staff was resting. The frog died on the spot, even while it was absorbed in the sweet voice of the Dhamma. As it died in full consciousness of the clear conviction in the goodness of the Dhamma, it was reborn in the Tvatisa realm, with a golden mansion 12 leagues wide as his residence, waited upon by a large retinue of Devakana, or divine maidens. Then he pondered on his new state. How have I got into this Deva existence? I was just a frog in my previous existence. What merit sent me, a mere animal, to this high state? And he saw no other merit than his getting absorbed in the voice of the Buddha's discourse, which was the voice of the Dhamma. Then he went to the Buddha while himself staying in his mansion, in the company of the divine maidens. He and his divine maidens descended from the mansion in full view of the human audience and stood before the Buddha in worshipping attitude. The Buddha knew the Deva, who was the frog which was stamped to death just a moment ago. Still, to let the audience realize the workings of productive deeds, as well as to show the abnormal psychic power of the Buddha in seeing the past existences of all beings, he spoke to the Deva in the following verse. Surrounded by a large retinue, shedding resplendent light all around with such powerful possession of a personal aura, who is it that pays homage to me? And the Deva who, just a moment ago, had been a frog replied, Venerable Sir, in my previous existence, I had been a frog, born and brought up in the water. Even while I was absorbed in your voice teaching Dhamma, a cowherd caused my death with his staff. Venerable Sir, just at the instant of my death, due to the serenity of my mind in listening to the Fortunate One's voice, I was reborn a Deva. And now, Venerable Sir, see my glorious state, replete with retinue, my personal appearance and everything, and, above all, my effulgence that reaches 12 leagues. Gautama, may those, who have for a long time listened to the Dhamma taught by you, attain the peace of Nibbana through path knowledge and become free from all sorrow. Then the Buddha delivered the discourse in detail, suited to the audience, by judging their past merits that would serve as sufficing conditions for awakening. By the end of the discourse, 84,000 beings comprehended the four truths and made an end of suffering. The Deva who had been a frog attained stream entry. He made obeisance to the Buddha, turned round with the Buddha on his right, and also worshipping the Saga, returned to the Deva realm in the company of his large retinue of Devakana. 8. He is the awakened one, Buddha. He is called the Buddha because he knows fully all knowable things. In another sense, he is the knower of the truths and also makes the four truths known to beings fit to know them. Hence, he is called the Buddha. The distinction between the second attribute of Samma Sambuddha and the eighth attribute of Buddha lies in that the former refers to the four truths, while the latter refers to the omniscience, Sabanuda a with Mekrane. If, however, the attribute Buddha is taken as supreme knowledge as the same for Samma Sambuddha, then the former relates to the penetrative knowledge, Peveda a with Mekrane, of the Buddha's wisdom, while the latter relates to the skillful aspect of the Buddha's wisdom in enlightening others, Dasana a with Mekrane. 9. He is endowed with the 6 exalted qualities, Bhagava. This attribute of the Buddha is explained in a variety of ways in the long exposition, Maha-Nadesa. The commentary also explains it in 6 different ways, while the sub-commentary to the Path to Purification, Visuddhimagga, gives 7 different interpretations. Here we shall discuss the first method of explanation in the Pi, which is also the third method of explanation in the commentary. This is the meaning generally given by Myanmar translators in their close literal renderings of the word, i.e., he who is endowed with 6 exalted qualities, Bhaga, the 6 exalted qualities, Vanta, being possessed of. The Buddha is called the Fortunate One, Bhagava, because he is endowed with the 6 exalted qualities unattainable by the disciples, namely 1. Supremacy, Isariya. 2. The 9 supermundane attainments, Dhamma. 3. Fame, Yasa. 4. Glory, Siri. 5. Accomplishment, Kama. And 6. Diligence, Payata. 1. Supremacy, Isariya. It means the innate power of the Buddha to bend things to his will. Supremacy is of 2 kinds, supermundane will power, Lokuttara Siddhasarya, and mundane will power, Loka Siddhasarya. As regards supermundane will power, the Buddha has unsurpassed will power. In 1125, displaying the twin miracle, to get a stream of water from the desired part of his body, he enters into the preliminary absorption of the water meditation object, Apokasya, and then makes the resolve, may there be a stream of water, which is a separate impulsion thought process, Adhina Vithi. Then he enters into the preliminary absorption of the water meditation object again. Then the special impulsion thought process, Abhya Vithi, arises that causes the stream of water to appear from whatever part of his body as he has willed it. Thus, to effect a stream of water from the desired part of his body, the Buddha has to go through 4 different thought processes. Likewise, to get a stream of fire glow from the desired part of his body, the Buddha enters into the preliminary absorption of the fire meditation object, Tejukasya, and then makes the resolve, may there be a stream of fire, which is a separate impulsion thought process. Then he enters into the preliminary absorption of the fire meditation object again. Then the special impulsion thought process arises that causes the stream of fire to appear from whatever part of his body he has willed it. Briefly speaking, to get a stream of water to flow from the body, the Buddha has to go through 4 separate thought processes. The same is required to get a stream of fire to burn from the body. The mastery of the Buddha's willpower is such that in going through the thought process in entering into the preliminary absorptions, he can bring to a stop the thought process in any number of thought moments he chooses. The life continuum thought moments, Bhavagasiddha, that have to intervene between the separate thought processes are also limited to 2. The mastery in arranging the separate thought processes and the life continuum thought moments as desired are the astonishing features of the Buddha's accomplishment in willpower. This is the power in controlling mundane absorption, jhana. Likewise, in supermundane consciousness of the arahat fruition, the Buddha has unsurpassed power of will. Due to this power, he enters into the absorption of the arahat fruition at such little odd moments when he takes a pause between making a point in his discourse and going on to the next, during which the audience would be saying, well done. As a matter of fact, there is not the shortest of odd moments when the Buddha does not dwell in the absorption of the arahat fruition. This is how the Buddha has amazing control of willpower in supermundane consciousness. 8 mundane features of the Buddha's willpower. In the teaching, 8 mundane features of the Buddha's willpower are generally cited. The 8 are briefly described below. 1. The Buddha can transform himself as small can be, even to an atomic size, anima. This was the power he employed in taming Brahmabhaka, where assuming the power of invisibility which was the bet between them. 2. He can transform himself as big can be, Mahima, even making himself taller than Mount Sinnaru, and up to any conceivable size that might cover up the entire world element, and still appear proportionate and glorious. This was the power he employed to impress the Lord of the Asuras who had previously thought he might have to look down on the Buddha because of his own enormous size. 3. He can levitate at will and travel in the air, Lagima, due to this power which causes lightness of the body comparable to his lightness of the mind. 4. He can travel to any faraway place at will. Patty. Ordinary people lacking in this power cannot travel bodily to far-off places as fast as their mind can travel. The Buddha can travel even to the Deva realms and Brahma realms bodily in an instant. 5. He can accomplish anything that he wishes, Pakama. In the 8 assemblies he resolved to appear as one of their kind, i.e. among Devas in the Deva realm he appears as a Deva, and so on. In teaching the doctrine to the inhabitants of the otherworld elements, he assumes the form, the voice, etc. of one of the kings of those places. 6. Dominating the will of others, Isita. All the Buddha routine is accomplished through this power. All beings have to fulfill the wishes of the Buddha. 7. Mastery of psychic powers and absorptions, Vasita. This is the power used to tame very powerful and arrogant individuals such as the Uruvala Naga, overpowering their powers in every respect, such as emitting fire, vapor, etc. 8. He has complete control over the absorptions and in displaying miracles and is able to terminate them as he wills, Yathakamavasayata. It is this power which accomplishes the twin miracle of fire and water emerging out of the various parts of his body, with fire glowing from the upper part of the body while water flows from the lower part of the body, and then suddenly even when the audience is watching in awe, making fire glowing from the lower part of the body while water flows from the upper part of the body, etc. The above 8 powers of the will in mundane consciousness are included in the knowledge by which supernormal powers are accomplished, iti vita abhina. The Buddha stands unrivaled in this knowledge. These 8 mundane powers and the mastery in mundane willpower and supermundane willpower mentioned above together are called the first of the 6 exalted qualities, i.e., supremacy, Isariya. O fortunate one! Your arahat fruition, arahata phala. Consciousness is marked by the mastery of supermundane willpower, as well as the 8 forms of mastery of mundane willpower, such as in turning yourself into an infinitesimal form. O fortunate one! May this be my humble adoration to you. 2. Knowledge of the 9 supermundane factors. Dhamma. This glorious quality is the knowledge of the Buddha in his unique attainment of the 9 factors of the supermundane sphere, the 4 paths, the 4 fruitions and nibbana that destroy all defilements so completely that no faint suggestion of their presence due to past habits remains. The meaning is obvious. Verse in adoration of the exalted quality of Dhamma. O steadfast one! You are imbued with the 4 noble paths, the 4 noble fruitions, and nibbana that destroy all the defilements, leaving not the faintest trace. O glorious font of the Dhamma! May this be my humble adoration to you. 3. Fame and followers, Yasa. The glorious reputation surrounding the Buddha is no empty boast, but it is true to its every detail and well-deserved. In that sense, the Buddha's reputation is pure, unadulterated, and unexaggerated. There are certain personages of wide repute, deserving of them, but their repute does not reach the 3 worlds, the human world, the Deva realm, and the Brahma realm. The reputation attributed to the Buddha is such that the achievers of non-material absorptions, Arupa Jhana, can remain in the non-material Brahma world, Arupa Brahma, and contemplate on the 9 supreme attributes of the Buddha. Since the Buddha's fame reaches even the non-material Brahma world, it hardly needs saying that this fame spreads in the form realm and the sensuous sphere as well. O steadfast one! You are attributed with glorious fame spreading over the 3 worlds, purely deserved by you. O paragon of personal repute! May this be my humble adoration to you. 4. Splendor of physical perfection, Siri. The Buddha's glorious quality of physical perfection was such that all humans, Devas and Brahmas could never satisfy themselves in gazing at his superb appearance, for he was endowed with the 32 marks of the great man, as well as with the 80 lesser characteristics. Those who went to see the Buddha had to leave only because the proper time to stay before his presence had run out, but they were not content with feasting their eyes on the sheer majesty of the person of the Buddha. O resplendent one! You are endowed with physical excellence in every aspect. That makes you the cynosure of all humans, Devas and Brahmas. O fairest of all men! May this be my humble adoration to you. 5. Accomplishment, Kama. The Buddha accomplishes all he sets out to accomplish, and the steadfast purpose, the steady effort underlying this power of accomplishment, is called Kama. Since as Bodhisattva Sumedha, he received the assurance of being a Bodhisattva from Buddha Dpakara, He had set his mind on leading humanity to liberation. May I become enlightened and may I be able to lead the multitudes to awakening, Buddho Bodhiya. May I attain liberation from the round of rebirth, and may I be able to lead the multitudes to liberation, Mudo Mosiah. May I cross over to the shore of safety, and may I be able to ferry across the multitudes to the shore of safety, Tayo Treya. That earnest desire, that steadfast purpose, had never waned in the Buddha. It was that purposefulness that led him to attain perfect awakening through path and fruit, thus fulfilling his earnest desire. He had thus gained awakening, had gained liberation from the round of rebirth, and had crossed over to the safe shore that is Nibbana. There are some people who may have earlier desired for the good and welfare of oneself as well as of others. But once their welfare is fulfilled, they are apt to forget about others' welfare, or are unable to carry out their set purpose concerning others. The Buddha attaining Buddhahood was reinforced by the path knowledge in devoting himself to his original task of helping others. This zeal was the principal cause of his accomplishment in making the multitudes see the four truths, enabling them to cross over to the safe shore of Nibbana. Therefore the steadfast wish, Adhigama Chanda, that was responsible for the glorious accomplishment of the Buddha's mission both for himself and for others, is Kama. O steadfast one, you have long wished for the good of yourself as well as of others. That earnest wish has found fulfillment now. O achieving one, may this be my humble adoration to you. 6. Diligence Payata. Diligence means having an unrivaled diligence. His untiring zeal in keeping up the fivefold Buddha routine earned him the love and esteem of the whole world. The right effort, Samavayana, that entitles him to the warm regard of the whole living world is the glorious quality of diligence, Payata. The fivefold Buddha routine. 1. Early morning routine, going on alms round, acceptance of meals by supporters, giving discourses of appreciation to supporters. 2. After meal routine, advice to Saga, meditation practice suitable for each monastic, short rest, survey of the world to find sentient beings ready for liberation, discourse to laity in the afternoon. 3. First watch of the night, bathing, slight rest, giving a discourse to the Saga. 4. Middle watch of the night, giving a discourse to Devas, Brahmas. 5. Last watch of the night, walking exercise, sleep for 4 hours from 10 p.m. to 2 a.m., survey of the world of sentient beings ready for liberation. O diligent one, you possessed right effort, that steadfastness which won the highest esteem by the whole world. O steadfast one, may this be my humble adoration to you. The Buddha's attributes in a nutshell. The attributes of the Buddha are infinite. Out of them, the 9 supreme attributes are mentioned in the scriptures for easy understanding and memorizing by humans, Devas and Brahmas. All of the Buddha's glorious attributes can be put into 2 main categories. 1. The attributes that proclaim the accomplishment of the Buddha by himself, Adahita Sampatti. 2. The attributes that stand testimony to the Buddha's service to the general weal of the multitudes, Parahita Paipati. In the first category there are 2 aspects. 1. The success the Buddha achieves in overcoming the defiling tendencies. 2. The endowment of a variety of knowledges. The innate powers of the Buddha that he is invested with flow from these 2 sources. In the second category of the Buddha's attributes too, there are 2 aspects. 1. The severity of effort in teaching the Dhamma to the multitudes purely out of compassion, untinged with any expectation of gain or fame. 2. The infinite patience in wishing well even to persons antagonistic to him, and in awaiting the ripeness of time on the part of the hearers to comprehend his teaching. The Buddha's acceptance of offerings of the 4 monastic requisites is another form of doing useful service to the supporters who thereby gain great merit. Thus the 9 attributes such as being worthy, araha, are taught to signify the 2 above aspects of his own accomplishments and his service for the welfare of others. The 9 supreme attributes are read into the above 2 aspects in the following way. Being worthy, araha, clearly describes the Buddha's success in getting rid of all defilements. Being perfectly self-awakened, Sammasambuddho, and knowing the conditioned arising of all beings, Lokavidu, clearly describe the Buddha's endowment of a variety of knowledges. Here, it might be asked, does knowing the conditioned arising of all beings also not stand for perfect self-awakening? The answer is, yes, it does. However, there is this distinction. Being perfectly self-awakened stands for the efficacy of perfect, 1129 self-awakening, while knowing the conditioned arising of all beings signifies the efficacy of the Buddha's discriminating knowledge about the mental framework of his hearers, such as tendencies, etc. Hence, two different attributes are proclaimed. Being endowed with the three knowledges, Vijja Kara Sampano, completely conveys the comprehensive accomplishment of the Buddha by himself. Being well gone, Sagato proclaims both the Buddha's accomplishment by himself and the achievement in working for the welfare of others, together with the underlying cause of both. Being incomparable in taming those who deserve to be tamed, Anataro Purisa Dhamma Sarthi, and being the teacher of devas and humans, Sathadeva Manusna, clearly demonstrate the Buddha's achievement in bringing welfare to others. Being the awakened one, Buddha, brings out the meaning of accomplishment by himself as well as accomplishment for the good of others. After mentioning being perfectly self-awakened, Samma Sambuddho, the Buddha further proclaims being the awakened one, Buddha, because the former indicates his penetrative knowledge whereas the latter conveys his knowledge in imparting knowledge. Being endowed with the six exalted qualities, Bhagava, highlights both the Buddha's accomplishment for himself and the success in bringing the welfare of others. Considered in another light, the supreme attributes of the Buddha fall under three categories, namely, 1. Attributes that are root causes, Hichu. 2. Attributes that are results, Phala. 3. Attributes that bring welfare to others, Satipakara. These three may be called success in root cause, success in result, and success in the welfare of the world. For attributes, viz., worthiness, Araha, perfectly self-awakened, Samma Sambuddho, endowed with the three knowledges, Vijja Kara Sampano, and knowing the conditioned arising of all beings, Lokavidu, portray the root causes of attributes that the Buddha is endowed with. Being incomparable in taming those who deserve to be tamed, Anataro Purisa Dhamma Sarthi, and being the teacher of devas and humans, Sathadeva Manusna, clearly describe the Buddha's success in working for the good of others. Being the awakened one, Buddha, clearly points out the Buddha's endowment of happy root cause as well as accomplishment for the good of others. Being well gone, Sagato, and being endowed with the six exalted qualities, Bhagava, reveal the endowment of the three kinds of success, i.e., in root cause, in result, and in the welfare of the world. Contemplation of the Buddha. Devotees should recite these verses at a speed neither too slowly nor too fast, reflecting on its meaning. One who reflects on the attributes of the Buddha, while doing so, prevents the arising of thoughts of lust, hatred, and delusion, besides gaining concentration which clears the mind of lethargy and distraction, and rendering it possible for a righteous thought process to arise through equanimity. When the concentration gets stronger through this meditation practice, the hindrances, Nvara, fall off, and defilements are quelled, and consequently, the five faculties beginning with faith, Sada, become very pure and effective. The repeated reflection on the Buddha sharpens initial application of the mind, Vitakka, and sustained application of the mind, Vikara. When these two factors are functioning well, delightful satisfaction, piti, arises. Due to the delightful satisfaction, serenity of mental concomitants and serenity of mind arise, as the result of which physical and mental uneasiness, which are defilements associated with subtle forms of distraction, are quelled. When there is serenity of mind and serenity of mental concomitants, happiness that causes the arising of concentration becomes pronounced. The thought process being enriched by happiness is firmly fixed on the object of meditation. Thus, the factors involved in meditation, beginning from initial application of the mind, become more and more efficient stage by stage. The mind is neither retarded nor distracted so that the medium attitude of mental exercise or equanimity is maintained and the five faculties such as faith are functioning in a balanced way. Now, the five factors of absorption, jhana initial application of the mind, sustained application of the mind, delightful satisfaction, happiness and one-pointedness of mind, arise simultaneously at every thought moment with the great meritorious consciousness, Maha Kasala Siddha, of the contemplation on the Buddha, which is mental cultivation pertaining to the sensuous sphere, kamavakara bhavana. Thus, neighborhood concentration or access concentration, upakara jhana, is achieved. When this concentration arises together with the great meritorious consciousness of the contemplation of the Buddha, which is mental cultivation pertaining to the sensuous sphere, the meditator is called one who has achieved access concentration based on the contemplation of the Buddha. Contemplation of the Buddha can, at best, reach the